good morning, it's Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning. And what a week it has been in Canadian politics. Probably the biggest news is Chrystia Freeland, the Finance Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, has been fired from her position on the Cabinet, or she resigned from the Cabinet, where, I heard that Justine Trudeau told her over a Zoom meeting that she was no longer required. But what happened in secret, we will never know. Was she pushed or did she jump? Now, as you can see, Chrystia Freeland is on the Board of Trustees for the World Economic Forum, along with Fink and Al Gore. So, she's a fairly serious person in the WEF. So I suspect that we haven't got rid of this person for good. She plans to run again in the next election. But she may well be distancing herself from the pariah Justin Trudeau as he gets ready to basically fall on his own sword, and is positioning herself for a run at Prime Minister, or to jump ship, whichever. She's sort of positioned herself very, very cleverly here to basically go whichever way the wind blows for the best for her personal career. And so that will be interesting to see how that plays out. However, there are 8, with her 9 actually, cabinet ministers that have stepped down this year out of the Trudeau government, which is pretty telling in and of itself. Many of them are not running again. I think only one of them is running again. And of course, just about all of them said that they're trying to move on, they're going to spend time with my family, blah, blah, blah. This is code for I'm getting the hell out of here before the shit hits the fan. Okay, so here very briefly is a list of Liberal cabinet ministers who have resigned in the last year. Other than Chrystia Freeland, of course. Sean Fraser, the housing minister's announcement that he does not plan to run in the next federal election, was largely overshadowed by Freeland's bombshell news hours later. Randy Boissonnault, the Edmonton MP, left his role as Employment Minister on November 20th following a scandal that grew out of questions over his claims of Indigenous identity and his business dealings. Media investigations into his business dealings revealed that a business he co-founded before the 2021 election had described itself as wholly Indigenous-owned in order to apply for government contracts set aside for Indigenous businesses. Fancy that. Dan Vandal, on October the 17th, the Northern Affairs Minister said he had decided not to run in the next election whenever it is held. After nearly 30 years in office, Vandal said it was time to move on to the next stage of my life, and said serving as the Cabinet Minister was a tremendous privilege. And they all use this kind of excuse. Oh, it's time to move on to the next stage. Oh, it's time to spend more time with my family. Okay, yeah, we get it. Carla Qualtrough. On the same day of Vandal's announcement, Sport Minister Carla Qualtrough also released a statement on social media saying that she too plans to step aside when the next election is called. Qualtrough offered few details except to say that it was time for her to move on. Oh, fancy that. She also thanked her family and the Prime Minister. Philomena Tassi, the minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, won't run in the next election. Marie-Claude Bibeau, the National Revenue Minister, also plans to step aside when the next election is called. Pablo Rodriguez. Rodriguez stepped down as Transport Minister and quit the Liberal caucus on September the 19th when he announced his intention to run for the Quebec Liberal leadership. Seamus O'Regan. On July 18th, O'Regan announced that he was leaving his post as Labour Minister and did not plan to run in the next election. So I think the Liberal Party are really in serious trouble. The Finance Minister stepped down on the day of the fall budget update, which announced, instead of a $40 billion deficit, a staggering $61.9 billion deficit, and also announcing a further $20 billion in spending, which probably has to be borrowed. And even Mark Carney won't go near this stinking fish. So he was slated as a possible stand-in for Justin Trudeau, but I think he's stepping back and just letting the crap hit the fan, as it were, and watch this play out before he makes his move. You've got to remember, these people, although we kind of think of them as being stupid, they're actually pretty canny, and they certainly know how to save their own asses, and they also know when the ship is sinking, and the rats at the top are always the first to jump ship before the ship actually goes down. But the two things that have happened this year, one very, very recently, the other earlier on in June, I believe it was, a Liberal stronghold in Toronto, Toronto St Paul, was lost to the Conservatives. Now, it was only by 500 odd votes, but this is a Liberal stronghold. Okay, and for them to lose to the Conservatives is quite a stunning blow. But the big one is the most recent, and that is in Cloverdale Langley City in BC, and the Conservatives won with a staggering 66% of the vote. Now that basically, if you look at the last outcome, the Conservatives have doubled their vote and the Liberal have halved their vote. So I think this is the writing on the wall that is the way the next election is going to go. So I think you're going to start seeing more and more Liberals, especially on the cabinet, jumping ship so they don't tarnish their own reputation by hanging on to Justin Trudeau, who is way past his best before date and is just completely reluctant. Well, this is what happens when you live in a bubble, of course. You know, he can't actually see. He thinks we're all crazy, that everyone is wrong and that he is right. Well, I think what I'd like to say about this is that this is what happens when you follow ideological policies instead of good common sense policies, especially fiscally. And you know, so many leaders, so many things in the past, groups in the past have fallen because they decided to choose the ideological route. And so these people, when they're confronted with a decision that conflicted with their ideology, well, they picked the ideological decision, and of course, because that was the incorrect decision, it led to unexpected consequences, which led to another wrong decision to deal with the consequences of that action, and so on and so forth. And so the whole thing is starting to come undone. More and more and more people recognize that the whole net zero, the DEI hires, the green organization, the EVs, it's just completely falling apart and none of it makes any sense, and yet they're doubling down and trying to use their power to force people to make bad decisions in their lives. Now, I don't know about any of you out there, I'm sure many of you feel like I do, but certainly at my age, there is no way that I'm spending 60 grand on a EV with a battery that has to be replaced every 10 to 12 years at the cost of anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000, let alone the inconvenience of having a short trip time, having all of your trips basically rotate around charging stations, not where you want to go, weather problems, fires. I mean, there is just an endless litany. Not to mention the pollution caused by the mining for the lithium and all of the things that are required to put this green agenda into place. And I don't know whether you've seen all of the solar panels that have recently been smashed by hailstones. It's absolutely stunning. Fields and fields and fields, acres and acres of these solar panels have been absolutely destroyed by heavy hail. Now, what good is that? You know, hail is a fairly common occurrence, certainly up here in Canada, and but elsewhere during the world. How is that going to work? You're going to cover all of those solar panels to protect them from the hail and the sun. Wow, fancy that. I mean, no, it's all falling apart. It's coming undone, and I think one of the things we can, and I'm going to harp onto a subject that I've been kind of latched onto here, but the whole lockdown situation of the last 4 years. It woke up so many people as to the ridiculousness of the decision making taking place, and then to force people to make decisions that they knew were not good for them. Well, the lawsuits are all happening now, and basically we are getting precedents set for nurses, airline staff, so on and so forth, who have been vindicated at the court level, and you watch the lawsuits roll. You watch the lawsuits roll, because that's what you need, is precedent. Once that's been proven once in a particular court, that can be used over and over and over again for anybody who was damaged by the decisions that either provincial, municipal or federal government politicians or employees made. And the key that we're finding out is to not sue these people in office, but to sue them as individuals. And if you get enough people doing that, of course, you know, they're all bonded. When the claims against these individual people exceed the bondable amount, all of a sudden, guess what? They're not bonded, and if you're not bonded, you can't work for government. So this is the route that many people are choosing to go, and you'll find, if you do some quick research, there are many examples of how you can do this. But personally, I think that the Liberal Party is in absolute tatters, and you are going to see this party in the next election fall so far from grace. Well, it'll be like the Ontario Liberals, who've actually lost party status because they have so few seats. I think they have 6 seats in the Ontario legislature, and of course the big fall from grace that we remember is under Brian Mulroney. Again, when he left office, they were dropped down to 6 or 7, and thankfully for them, they were allowed to keep party status. Even though I think you have to have a minimum of 9 seats, I think it is, to maintain party status. But I think you're going to see just a disaster in this next election. And what the Conservatives will bring to the table, well, they'll have a majority. And so we will have to put up with their decision-making process. But I am hoping that the people in the Conservatives have watched what has happened to the Liberals and their fall from grace, and are putting a little note to self to be honest and transparent. Okay, well, that's about it from me. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below. I would love to hear your point of view on this, although I think I got a pretty good idea what your feelings are as well. But as I say, like, comment, subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant morning, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.